Good morning, everyone. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the October 25th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer hearing. My name is Susan Finch, and I'll be presiding as the hearing officer over today's cases. Let me start by introducing Mr. Tom Hisney with the Hillsborough County Development Services Department. He'll go over any changes as well as introduce staff members that are present today. Mr. Hisney.
Good morning, Mrs. Finch. Hi, I'm Tom Hisney with Hillsborough County Development Services. To my left is Carmen Mason. She is also with Hillsborough County Development Services. During the course of the hearing, we'll be joined by a number of planners virtually with Development Services. We are also going to be joined by Mary Dorman of the County Attorney's Office, as well as Jillian Massey of the Planning Commission staff. Madam Hearmaster, we have one change to the agenda, and that change it concerns item J2. Special use application 21-0915. The applicant is Regional Properties Incorporated. They're requesting a special use approval for a community residential home type B. The applicant has come to the hearing today to request a continuance to the December 13th Land Use Hearing Officer meeting.
Okay, is the applicant here? Start by giving us your name and address, please.
Good morning. My name is Russell Ottenberg. My address is 3737 Lake Joyce Drive, Land O'Lakes, 34639. As Tom said, we are requesting a continuance to the December hearing. We've been attempting to coordinate with the neighborhood for a community meeting to discuss the project and things of that nature. Haven't had the chance to do that yet, and so we would appreciate the additional time in order to have the hearing.
All right, thank you so much. Is there anyone in the audience or online that would like to speak to the continuance? Sir, if you could please sign in with the clerk's office. If you'd like to come forward, just to speak to the continuance only, not the merits of the case. Good morning.
Thank you so much. First name is Howard, last name is Brian. I live at 3618 Delarua. And as representing the residents there, we would want to have this continuation so that we can work with the applicant in terms of things that can make it more suitable at this point in time for the residents. And so we would appreciate you affirming his decision to have the continuation.
Perfect. Thank you for your comments. If you could please also sign in with the clerk's office. Anyone else that would like to speak regarding the continuance of this application? Seeing no one, then we will grant the continuance of special use GEN 21-0915 to be heard at the December 13th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer hearing. Mr. Hisney, please continue with the changes to the agenda.
Well, we have no further changes. I will read now the published withdrawals and continuances. Item A1, special use application 21-0606. Applicant is Dune, Florida Land One Sub LLC and South Shore Bay Club LLC. This application is being continued by staff to the November 15th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. I'd like to point out that under the time frame provided for the Land Development Code in which a application must come to hearing, November is the final hearing that can be scheduled on this case, and the applicant is aware of that. Next item, A2, variance application 21-0902. The applicant is David Wright. This application is being continued by staff to the November 15th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Item A3, appeal 21-0907, applicant Todd Pressman. This application has been withdrawn by the applicant. Excuse me. Item A4, variance application 21-1054. The applicant is NRS LLC. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the November 15th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Item A5, variance application 21-1151. The applicant is Stacy Friello. This application has been withdrawn by the applicant. Item 86, variance application 21-1154. The applicant is Renee Rodriguez. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the November 15th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Item A7, variance application 21-1223. The applicant is William Alvarez. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the November 15th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Item A8, variance application 21-1230. Applicant is Vivian and Eddie Suarez. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the November 15th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Item A9, variance application 21-1248. The applicant is Maria del Rosario Perez and Guillermo del Rio. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the November 15th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. And finally is item A10, variance application 21-1256. The applicant is Jerry and Patrick Police. This application is being continued by staff to the December 13th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Let me start by going over our hearing procedures for today's agenda. Our hearing today consists of agenda items that require a public hearing by a land use hearing officer. I'll conduct a hearing on each agenda item and will file a decision within 15 working days following today's hearing. Our hearing today is informal. I'll ask questions related to the scope of direct testimony. I may call and question witnesses as I deem appropriate, and will decide all questions of procedure. Evidence may be presented in written form, and all testimony must be under oath. Hearsay evidence may be used to support a finding or explain other evidence, but shall not be sufficient alone to support a finding by me unless it would be admissible over objections in a civil action. Our order of presentation is as follows. We have both variances and special use applications on our agenda. The order of procedure is the same with the exception of the beginning. So for variances, the Development Services staff person, Mr. Hisney, will introduce the agenda item, and then the staff planner that was assigned to that case will take 5 minutes to explain the county's, the application and the county's findings. The applicant will then go second for variances and present their request. They have a total of 15 minutes to present their application. We'll then turn to proponents, anyone who would like to speak in favor. Total time is 15 minutes. The same is true when we then go to opponents, anyone who would like to speak against an application, 15 minutes. Then back to Development Services, who has 5 minutes to comment on any issue that was presented during our hearing. And then finally, we go back to the applicant, who has 5 minutes for rebuttal. The special, as I said, the special use is the same with the exception of the beginning, and that is the applicant goes first for a special use application. They have 15 minutes, and then the Development Services staff person has 5 minutes to go through. And for items where the Planning Commission comments on special use agenda items, which is everything except the alcoholic beverage requests, they too have 5 minutes to present their findings of consistency with the comprehensive plan. If I don't think we'll have this issue today, it doesn't seem like it, but if there are a number of people that would like to speak in favor or against an application, that time frame, as I mentioned, is 15 minutes for each side. So if you want to designate a spokesperson to represent you, that's an efficient use of time. Otherwise, we will just have you raise your hand as to the number of people that would like to speak, and we will divide that 15 minutes the best we can. When you come up to speak, if you are in the room or if you are virtual, always start by giving us your name and address for the record. We are recording this hearing, and we want to make sure that we have who's speaking and to which agenda item correct. When you're done speaking, if you're here in the room, if you could see Robbie and Allison to my right, they're with the clerk's office, and also sign in with your name and address and the application number to which you spoke. Let me now turn to the county attorney, who will provide you the legal requirements for appealing a decision made by the land use hearing officer. I believe that's Ms. Dorman. Good morning.
Good morning. This is Mary Dorman from the county attorney's office. This land use hearing officer public hearing is for variance and special use requests. This is the time for interested parties to present evidence and testimony. Once the hearing officer has closed the case, the record of that case is also closed, and no new evidence regarding that case may be submitted thereafter. Any decision by the hearing officer may be appealed to the Land Use Appeals Board. Should a decision of the hearing officer be appealed, the evidence and testimony presented at this public hearing shall be the only evidence that is subject to review by the Appeals Board. In reaching a final decision on petitions, the Appeals Board will only consider the decision of the hearing officer and the record made at this public hearing. If an appeal is filed, the Appeals Board hearing shall consist of oral argument by the party appealing the decision, county staff, and any interveners, each of whom may be represented by legal counsel. The following shall have standing to appeal a decision of the hearing officer or to intervene in an appeal. 1, the applicant, or 2, anyone who appeared before the hearing officer, presented testimony or other evidence, and is adversely affected by the decision of the hearing officer. It is the role of the county attorney's office to ensure that no new evidence or testimony is allowed before the appeals board that was not presented to the hearing officer at today's hearing. The county attorney will recommend that the appeals board disregard evidence or testimony that is outside the record made at today's public hearing. Any evidence presented to the appeals board that is outside the record created at today's hearing could jeopardize the legality of the appeals board decision, and the presenter of that evidence could hurt their own cause. The safest course of action then is for you to write down any comments you make today and repeat them to the appeals board.
Thank you, Ms. Dorman. I appreciate it. All right, as I mentioned, all testimony must be under oath. So if you plan to speak today, if you could please stand, raise your right hand, and I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated. All right, Mr. Hussein, we're ready for the first case.
All right, so on today's agenda, we have no remands. We have no vested rights, which then takes us to section C of the agenda, which are fee waivers. We have one fee waiver request, item C1, fee waiver 21-0372. The applicant is Sweetwater Organic Farms. The applicant is requesting consideration of an exception to the fee waiver criteria found in the Development Review Procedures Manual. In this case, the applicant is a nonprofit organization under the guidance of the DRPM. Staff can only approve fee waiver requests by nonprofit organizations. In such cases where there is an existing contract with the organization to provide social services on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners, and that contract resulted from either participation in the county's biannual competitive or non-competitive request for application process, or as a result of having been previously selected by the County Commission through a competitive process to provide county social services. Funds have been allocated to this organization by the Board of County Commissioners. However, management and budget staff has advised staff that award did not result from participation in the RFA process or a competitive process as required by the DRPM. Therefore, staff could not approve the fee waiver. Applicants in such cases can then approach the land use hearing officer to consider an exception. And the hearing officer shall conduct an independent review of your request based on the criteria found in the DRPM and testimony at this hearing. In granting an exception, the hearing officer shall be required to find extraordinary financial circumstances, emergency, catastrophe, or staff error, which are outside the scope of the administrator's authority to consider. And the applicant in this case is being represented by Chris Kenrick.
All right, thank you so much. I understand the applicant is virtual.
Yes, good morning. I'm virtual.
If you could give us your name and address to begin.
My name is Chris Kenrick. Address for the property in consideration for the hearing, 6942 West Comanche Avenue, Tampa, Florida, 33634.
All right. If you could just tell us a little bit about your request.
So I'm the director of Sweetwater Organic Community Farm. We're a 501c3 nonprofit located in Town and Country. We're Florida's oldest community supported agricultural farm. We're 100% volunteer run, and we're submitting a fee waiver request to make a major modification to Sweetwater Organic Community Farm. We would like to build a farm school. We would like to build a commercial kitchen on the farm. We would like to start a co-op grocery store, and we would like to start a small primitive eco campground. We have a small budget, as the previous gentleman stated. We were awarded funds by the county commission last year, but that was not through a competitive process. And so today we are presenting our fee waiver request, and we hope that you approve.
Mr. Kendrick, let me ask you, as Mr. Hisney read, the Land Development Code requires the hearing officer to make a finding. So in my decision as to whether to waive this fee or not, I have to make a finding of extraordinary financial circumstances, emergency, catastrophe, or staff error as to why the county would waive your fee for the major modification. So I see in the backup that you stated, I think in the narrative, you stated that the farm has lost 95% of our educational field trip funding due to schools being unable to visit the farm during the school season. Is that the reason for the extraordinary financial circumstance?
Well, that's one of the reasons. I mean, the issues with lost revenue from field trips, lost revenue from, the pandemic of being able to have farm to table dinners, which were our fundraising dinners. We weren't able to have those for the last couple of years, just with the social gatherings. I mean, we would have dinners of up to 200 people, and that's where the bulk of our funds would come from to be able to continue to operate. Also, pre-pandemic, we had 10 full-time employees, we had a staff, and now we're 100% volunteer run. So we don't have the organizational infrastructure, we don't have the team, and we don't have the revenue sources that we were getting before. And so that's why we're looking at diversifying the way that the farm's operating by building a commercial kitchen. I mean, Mother Kombucha started on the farm, so we want to create a space where we can create more value-added products, both for the farm and other organizations, providing support for our vendors at the market. But I mean, our operating budget is typically around $100,000. The county invested $100,000 last year into the farm, but our revenues are down significantly. So we really need to look at ways that we can change how the farm operates to continue to serve Hillsborough County and the local neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your testimony. Does
you.
that complete your presentation?
Yes, unless anybody has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. No other questions at this time. Thank you so much. All right, on a fee waiver, we don't take testimony in favor or against. Mr. Hisney, anything else before we move on?
No, ma'am.
All right, then with that, we'll close fee waiver 21-0372 and go to the next case.
Okay, we have no remands today or reconsideration requests, which then takes us to section F of the agenda, site development variance request. We have two cases. First item is F1, variance 21-1116. The applicant is Hydrologic Distribution Company. They're requesting a variance to encroach into the wetland conservation area setback. Staff findings will be presented by Ryan Joyce.
All right.
Good morning. This is Carla Shelton with Hillsborough County Natural Resources. The applicant is requesting a variance from the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback requirement, section 4.01.07B of the Land Development Code. The applicant's specific request, as shown on the site plan submitted on June 24th, 2021, is to allow for construction of a chain link fence within the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. Per Land Development Code, section 4.01.07B4, No filling, excavating, or placement of permanent structures or other impervious surfaces shall be allowed within the required 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. The applicant requests construction of a chain link fence within the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. That's all from staff.
Ms. Shelton, before you go, can you just tell me how much that fence encroaches into the 30-foot setback?
There is a site plan in the packet, and I believe at least at some part, the fence is right on the wetland line or just landward of the wetland line.
Oh, I see. So almost 30 feet into the setback.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Is the applicant here? Good morning.
Brian Unks, McFarlane, Ferguson, McMullen, 625 Court Street on behalf of the applicant Hydrologic and Elizabeth Properties LLC. Your Honor, I put the site plan on the overhead. I'm not sure if we can get that up. I also have a packet of evidence that I would like to hand to Your Honor, if that's okay, including expert resumes.
Absolutely. Do you have one copy of that? Okay. Can you get the other copy to the clerk's office, please? Thank you.
So, Your Honor, as staff said, this application is for a variance to section 4-0107B regarding the 30-foot conservation area setback to wetlands. The fence is proposed in the colored portion, the kind of yellow colored portion of the site plan. The conservation buffer is actually the red line. So you can see that it juts in and out of the area where the fence is proposed. The farthest away that the fence is from the conservation, or the minimum amount of encroachment is 5 feet. The maximum amount of encroachment is approximately 25 feet. So in this area, on this area of the plan, we are about 5 feet away from the wetlands. On the area farther away, we're about 25 feet away from wetlands. And Mr. Menendez will testify to that momentarily. Your Honor, this was subject to a previous application back in April of 2021 that was heard by Mr. Wells. In that application, the applicant was actually also proposing about 5,000 square feet of impervious surface for parking spaces in that conservation buffer. In Mr. Wells's findings, he determined that that would be a drainage problem. He denied the variance. In this case, we've removed any impervious surface. So this variance is simply requesting the 6-foot tall fence to secure the property, which will not involve any drainage impacts, any ecological impacts whatsoever to the wetlands. There is additional evidence that has come to be in support of the variance since the April hearing. Specifically in May of 2021, this site was cited for a code violation regarding trash, debris, and illegal dumping, specifically from what the code enforcement staff refer to as vagrants. And that is on page 2. Your Honor, you can see that it says remove all miscellaneous junk, trash, and debris caused by vagrants. And that was by a code inspector. That is directly from this unsecured area of the property. This property is almost complete construction. It's going to be a 60,000 square foot warehouse and also 3,500 square foot retail space for hydrologic plumbing systems. So the goal here is to secure the perimeter of the property, and the variance is simply asking for the fence in order to do that. As you heard, staff has reviewed this variance application. It doesn't sound like staff has any objections to the conditional approval of the application. There was no public opposition to the prior request, which included the impervious surface area. I don't anticipate there'll be any public opposition to simply allowing the variance for the fence to secure the property. This time, Your Honor, I'd like to ask Mr. Roger Menendez, AICP, to testify regarding his report, which is also in your packet, regarding the ecological impacts. Mr. Menendez is a certified ecologist. He's also a certified planner, AICP. So I'd like to qualify him as an expert in the areas of ecology and also in planning in general.
Can I, before you move on to Mr. Menendez, can I just ask one quick question?
the purpose, as you stated, of the fence is to secure the property. Will that fence remain once the warehouse building is completed?
Yes, ma'am. It's intended to secure the perimeter of the property in perpetuity.
I see. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Menendez? Why don't you go ahead and give the hearing officer a narrative of a summary of your opinions? And I've
Start
got
by
your report.
Giving us your name and address, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Roger Menendez. I'm with Dual and Associates at 565 South Hercules Avenue, Clearwater, 33764.
Thank you.
So basically, the issue here is the fence along that northeastern border of the property. And what I've found is that land use, the use of that fence along that wetland would match the land use to the abutting property, which is Tampa General Hospital. They have a property immediately abutting, and they have a stormwater pond there. And that stormwater pond is fenced, and it abuts the wetland. So this fence is really, it's nothing outrageous or anything that would be different from the adjacent property. In fact, I would assume that they would want this fence as well to secure their property too. Secondly, the fence, it's a chain link fence. It wouldn't affect the wetlands or the wetland buffer. It is in the wetland buffer, but it wouldn't block water flow, and there are no water quality impacts as a result of the fence. As far as we know, there are no great objections to the fence from an ecological standpoint. Now, you might say, well, what about potentially animals, small animals out there, squirrels, rabbits, creatures of this sort would get around the fence anyway. So that's not the issue. The issue is to secure the fence and keep some of the homeless and trash dumping from getting in the wetlands, in the wetland buffer, as well as the property that we're discussing and the property adjacent.
All right. Thank you so much. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask Mr. Menendez one question?
Sure.
Mr. Menendez, from a planning perspective, have you also reviewed this application from the variance criteria of 11.04.02 of the Land Development Code?
Yes, sir.
And from a planning perspective, do you believe that the application has provided competent, substantial evidence to support the variance and met all of the criteria required for a variance?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. So, Your Honor, that basically concludes our presentation. We believe that the application, along with the expert testimony of Mr. Menendez and the staff review, provides Your Honor with competent, substantial evidence to support the variance request. We believe the removal of any impervious surface regarding the parking spaces definitely should mitigate any concerns that Mr. Wells had regarding drainage issue in his April opinion. We also believe that the code enforcement citation from May further provides evidence of a hardship that was not created by the applicant, not result of any illegal act by the applicant. And that, as you can see, there are some very unique site constraints as it relates to the jutting in and out of the wetland conservation buffer. We believe that this is extremely minimal to no impact whatsoever ecologically on the wetlands themselves or on the buffer, and that it will serve the public good by securing the property, much like all of the other property owners in that area enjoy the right to do. If Your Honor has any other questions, we'd love to answer those. I do have some other representatives from the applicant here if you have any other questions or need additional information, but we're really, really hoping this will be approved and that we can move forward with securing the property. Thank you.
No further questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application in the room or online? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition to this request? No one. County staff, anything further?
Sir, I need you to come in and sign in with us, please.
County staff, anything else before we move on? Ms. Shelton?
Nothing further from staff.
All right, thank you. So let me go back to the applicant real quick. I don't think you, sir, you don't have anything else before I close?
No.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We'll close variance 21-1116 and go to the next case.
Next case is item F2, variance application 21-1123. The applicant is David Wright of the TSP Companies Incorporated. The request is a variance to encroach into wetland conservation area setback. Staff findings will be presented by Carla Shelton.
Good morning, Carla Shelton with Natural Resources staff from Hillsborough County. The applicant is requesting a variance from the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback requirement. The applicant's 2021 is to allow for construction of a retaining wall and a portion of a single-family home and driveway within the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. Per LDC section 4.01.07 B4, no filling, excavating, or placement of permanent structures or other impervious surfaces shall be allowed within a required 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. The applicant of a single-family home and driveway within the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. The applicant requests a 15-foot reduction of the setback to allow for a setback of 15 feet. Additional findings, the applicant has submitted a wetland setback compensation planting plan with a square footage of planting exceeding that of the amount of encroachment into the wetland setback area.
Thank you, Ms. Shelton. I appreciate it. Is the applicant here?
Good morning, Madam Hearing Officer. This is David Wright. I'm online.
Good morning.
My name is David Wright, president of TSP Companies. Our address is P.O. Box 1016, Tampa, Florida 33601, and I have been sworn in. Today, I'm presenting a variance request for the property with address 11424 Donnie Moore Drive in Riverview, Florida. Subject property is zoned RSC2 and located within the Shadow Run subdivision. The request is a variance to Land Development Code Section 4.0107B4 to reduce the required 30-foot wetland conservation area setback to 15 feet to allow the construction of a single-family residence. Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission completed a wetland delineation of the subject property in August of 2020, and the 0.92 acre property was determined to contain 0.34 acres of wetlands and 0.58 acres of uplands. The wetlands account for approximately 37% of the subject property based on the EPC approved wetland delineation. As previously mentioned, the subject property is located within the Shadow Run subdivision, and the declaration of protective covenants and restrictions of the Shadow Run subdivision requires a 25-foot side yard setback, whereas the Land Development Code requires a 10-foot side yard setback. The Shadow Run HOA requires a side yard setback that is 150% larger than the setback required by the Land Development Code. The property owner initially applied to the Shadow Run Homeowners Association for a variance to reduce the side yard setback from 25 feet to 15 feet. That request was denied by the HOA, but the HOA approved a 5-foot reduction of the side yard setback. This results in a 20-foot side yard setback that is still twice the depth of the setback required by the Land Development Code. This application is requesting a variance from the county to reduce the wetland conservation area setback that is located on the opposite side of the property to allow the development of a single-family residence that meets all of the lot development standards of the RSC2 zoning district as required by the LDC. If granted, this variance would result in a 1,175 square foot encroachment into the wetland conservation area setback, and the applicant is proposing to mitigation plantings of 1,200 square feet of approved wetland trees and shrubs within the wetland conservation area setback as depicted on the site plan. This request has been reviewed by zoning staff and natural resources staff without any objection and has been found to be approvable. We mailed a notice of this application to surrounding property owners as required by the Land Development Code, and were not contacted by anyone seeking any additional information or objecting to this request. And there are no objections in the party of record for this application. We prepared and submitted a complete and thorough application in accordance with the county's Land Development Code. The variance application included the variance criteria responses, so I will refrain from reading those now in the interest of time. I respectfully request your approval of this request based on the large and irregular shaped wetland that is located within the subject property and the significant increased side yard setback required by the Shadow Run HOA. We appreciate your consideration, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. No questions at this time. Is there anyone in the room or online, excuse me, that would like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition to the request? No one. All right, county staff, Ms. Shelton, anything else before we go?
Nothing else from staff.
All right, Mr. Wright, you have the last word.
No, thank you. We're good.
All right, thank you. Then with that, we'll close variance 21-1123 and go to the next case.
That concludes our wetland variances. We have no sign variances. Takes us to section H of the agenda, which are our general variances. First case is item H1, application 21-1207. The applicant is Christy Burkhead of Alignment Construction. They're requesting a variance to lot development standards. Staff findings will be presented by Sam Ball.
Good morning, Sam Ball, Development Services. The applicant is requesting a variance to accommodate a proposed addition to a single-family home on a property zoned ASC 1. According to LDC Section 611, a 15-foot minimum side yard setback is required in an ASC 1 district. The applicant is requesting a 3-foot reduction to the required setback to allow a 12-foot setback from the east property line. The subject parcel's ASC 1 zoning designation requires a 1 acre minimum lot size and a 150-foot minimum lot width. The dimensions of the subject parcel are approximately 1/2 acre in size and 100.73 feet in width. However, the lot has been certified as legally non-conforming for NCL 21-1395, which is placed in the case record for this subject variance. That concludes my report. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
No questions, but thank you so much. Is the applicant here? Good morning.
Good morning, Christy Burkhead, Alignment Construction, 6112 Japonica Court, Newport Richey, Florida. The property owners, the Santorellis, actually built this home 30 years ago, have been living there, raised their family. Father was the architect on the home. So this is a neighborhood that they love and would like to stay, but they'd like to expand it to allow for some aging in place. So we are requesting to extend 10 feet, which would take us 3 feet over the property line, over the setback line.
Okay.
So I have with me, you can see here on the survey, the existing property. You can hear me, the existing property. And then in the highlighted area is where we would like to extend. So let's see.
Have you spoken to the neighbor?
That is what I'm putting right here for you. This is the next door neighbor. That is a notarized letter that he approves of the request. And then I also have 2 other letters from the other adjacent neighbors also approving the request with me. So
Okay.
it's here as well. And then that's it.
Okay, thank you. Are you going to submit those into the record?
Yes,
Those letters? If you could, when you sign in with the clerk's office, just give them to them and I'll see them. Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
testimony. Is there anyone in the room or online that would like to speak in support of this request? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition? No one. County staff, Mr. Ball, anything else before we go?
I know nothing further. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Then with that, we'll close variance 21-1207 and go to the next case.
Next case is item H2, variance application 21-1211. Applicant is Belvedere Builders. They're requesting a variance to accessory structure regulations. Staff findings will be presented by Kevy DeFrank.
Good morning, everyone. Kevy DeFrank with Development Services. For this variance request, the applicant is requesting a setback variance for a proposed accessory structure on a single-family lot zone AS1. And per the Land Development Code, accessory structures that are 15 feet or less in height shall not be erected in any required front yard except under circumstances which do not apply to this case. Accessory structures shall be permitted in front yards at twice the depth of the required front yard or 50 feet, whichever is less. And additionally, such structures shall not occupy required side yards. And per the Land Development Code, the required front yard setback in the AS1 district is 50 feet. Specifically, the applicant requests a 45-foot reduction to the required front yard setback to allow a setback of 5 feet from the northwesterly lot line. And staff findings include that the AS1 district requires a minimum lot size of 1 acre and a minimum lot width of 150 feet. Now, the subject parcel is 0.94 acres in size and 125 feet in width. However, it has been certified as a legal non-conforming lot per NCL 21-1346, which has been placed in the case record. Also, access to the subject property is provided via an easement, Collins Springs Cove, which connects to Public Street, Watson Road, to the north of the property. And per the Land Development Code, required yards on lots accessed by easements shall be oriented with respect to the roadway to which the easement connects, as if the lot abutted the roadway. Therefore, the required front yard on the subject property is along the northwesterly lot line. And according to the applicant, the proposed accessory structure will have a maximum height of 15 feet. And the applicant also stated that there are plans to replace the existing house on the property with the new house shown on the survey submitted. However, the applicant has advised staff that the new house is not part of the subject variance request. Therefore, staff has advised the applicant that any variances which may be identified and requested in association with the future for the new house, which will require submittal of a separate variance application at that time. And that concludes the report, and I'm available for questions.
No questions. Thank you, though. Is the applicant here? Good morning.
Michael Kildow, Belvedere Builders. I'm representing Simon Spears.
Could you give us your address also, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, 1385 Oakfield Drive. That's Brandon, Florida, 33511.
Thank you.
Address for the applicant is 6713 Collins Spring Cove, that's Riverview, 33578. So there's an existing garage. We'd like to remove that existing garage, which is a 24 by 24 by 15 masonry garage, and construct a new 73 by 25 by 15 masonry garage. The current LDC AS1 does not allow a detached structure located in the front yard. Due to the extreme existing lot grades, we need to utilize the existing location for the new garage as it's the only level area on the lot that automobiles can safely be parked. That concludes my presentation.
Let me just ask you one question. The existing, I understand the proposed garage is larger, but would it be fair to say that it's generally, the proposed garage is generally in the same area as the existing garage?
Yeah, it would be in the same area. That's correct.
Okay, that was my only question.
I have pictures if you'd like to see of the existing garage, which is in bad shape.
Sure, absolutely. You can also submit them into the record when you're done.
So we emailed those to Carmen?
Yes, I think I have
On
seen
Friday.
pictures, but if you want to show them at the hearing, that's terrific.
It's just an old garage. There's some settlement, stair step and cracking. So it's, we're ready for a new garage.
All right.
Quite a bit of water damage there in settlement.
All right.
Okay, that concludes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. If you could please sign in. All right. Is there anyone that would like to speak in support of this application? Yes, sir. You'd like to come forward? While he's coming up, is there anyone else that would like to speak in support? Seeing no one. All right. Good morning, sir. If you could please give us your name and address.
Name is Simon Spears. I am not currently living at the address that is for the variance. I'm currently living at 3115 Phoenix Avenue, Oldsmar, and I've only just moved there and can't remember the zip code.
That's okay.
This project is in aid of myself and my wife. The lot is absolutely wonderful. It is on the river, right on a bend with an island. It is a beautiful lot. The house is not holding up well. I don't think the house was particularly engineered, and certainly the garage was not. I've been in construction all my life. I have a degree in engineering, and it doesn't meet any codes that I've ever heard. It will come down. Whether we knock it down or not, it's going to fall down. It is in very, very bad shape. It's got undermining by water. There is some drainage issues which come off the adjacent properties. There are 3 adjacent properties. To the east is my neighbors, who have a very nice house. They have an access right in front of where we hope the garage to be, and in front of the existing garage, which gives them access. The neighbors to the other side and to the, I call it the rear, but you guys call it the front. So is a piece of property which I believe is owned by the federal government and leased by Mosaic. It's a long-term lease. It will not be built on. I don't think it will ever be built on. On this piece of leased property is Buckhorn Springs. Buckhorn Springs is a pumping station out of the springs, which supplies Mosaic with water all the way down to the Big Bend plant. It also encompasses a very, very large pipe where water travels through from Lithia Springs. This is just a piece that they don't use. It has no fence around it. We have been given permission to park vehicles on it, to use it. We maintain it. It will not affect anybody. There is, I'm going to guess at 200 or 300 acres back there without any residences on it. The garages themselves are for my car collection and for my wife. My wife is now 75 years old. She has an artificial knee. This piece of property is rather unique that the very substantial hill on the property is man-made. We had a geographical survey done on the property, and it was determined that right adjacent to our property, we're not exactly sure where, but in the late 1800s, there was a mine. It mined phosphates. There is a sheet of limestone which travels under the Alafaya River, and from my understanding, travels all the way to Zephyr Hills. As the miners went down through this sheet of limestone, they blasted it out, and there are rocks the size of cars which were placed along the edge of, I don't know what was there, but they were placed along the edge. All the dirt that came out of the mine was put on top. The mine closed in, I think it was 1907. So this hill, which kind of divides the lot into 2 halves, one half is at the level of the river, the other half is about 25 feet higher and is sitting on this man-made fill area. So there is no options for us to be able to build, and we have very big restrictions. To be able to build the new house, we're going to have to probably invest somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 just for retaining walls to hold it all up. But it's worth it to me. It'll be the last place I'll ever live. So I respectfully request that you allow me to build my garages. My wife has an artificial knee. She can't get up and down the stairs. we're not going to be around too much longer. So.
All right. Well, we're glad you're here. So thank you. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office. Anyone else that would like to speak in support? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition to this request? All right. No one. Mr. DeFrank, anything further?
No, nothing further.
All right. Then with that, we'll close variance 21-1211 and go to the next case.
Our last variance today is item H3, application 21-1276. The applicant is Candace and Christopher Perez. They're requesting variances to accessory dwelling requirements, accessory structure requirements, and lot development standards. Staff findings will be presented by Chris Grangillard.
Good morning. Chris Gralinar, planner with Development Services. I'm here to present a variance 21-1278. The applicant is requesting multiple variances to accommodate an existing single-family home, accessory dwelling, and a pole barn on property zoned AS-1. The first variance is a primary for the primary dwelling. Per LDC section 6.01.01, minimum rear yard setback of 50 feet is required in the AS1 district. The applicant requests a 20.1 foot reduction to the required rear yard setback to allow a setback of 29.9 feet from the south property line. The second variance is for the accessory dwelling. Per LDC section 6.11.02, an accessory dwelling shall meet principal building setbacks. Per LDC section 6.01.01, the required minimum rear yard setback in the AS1 district is 50 feet. The applicant requests a 45.6 foot reduction to the required rear yard setback to allow a setback of 4.4 feet from the south property line. The third variance is for the pole barn. Per LDC section 6.11.04.c.2, accessory structures that are 15 feet or less in height may occupy required side yards, provided they are no closer to the street than any part of the principal building on the same lot, and any lot abutting said required side yard, and the structure is set back a minimum of 3 feet from the side lot line, including agricultural features such as eaves and gutters. In the subject case, the pole barn, which the applicant states is 15 feet in height, is closer to the street, Swiley Road, than a portion of the single-family home on the lot, therefore must meet the required side yard setback. Per LDC section 6.01.01, a minimum side yard setback of 15 feet is required in the AS1 district. The applicant requests a 15-foot reduction to the accessory structure required side yard setback to allow a 0 setback from the east property line. The findings, first one, an existing garage on the property was converted into an accessory dwelling. According to the survey submitted by the applicant, the structure has 896.13 square feet of floor area. Pursuant to LDC section 6.11.02.c, an accessory dwelling is limited to a maximum of 900 square feet of living space. The applicant has advised staff the accessory dwelling includes a kitchen and bathroom as defined and required by the LDC. Number two, the applicant has been cited by the building services for failure to obtain building permits for the accessory dwelling and pole barn. The applicant has been advised that if the subject variances are approved, after the fact building permits for these structures must be obtained. Number three, according to the submitted survey, the pole barn encroaches into the adjacent parcel approximately 1 foot. Staff has advised the applicant the subject variance, if granted, will not constitute approval for the encroachment. According to the applicant, they are currently negotiating the sale of a portion of the neighbor's parcel to rectify this violation. Fourth finding, per LDC section 6.01.01, a minimum lot size of 1 acre is required in the AS1 district. The subject parcel is 0.83 acres. in size and therefore is non-conforming. However, it has been certified as a legal non-conforming lot per NCL application at 21-1310, which is in the case record. That concludes my report for variance 21-1278. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
No questions at this time. Thank you. Is the applicant here? Good morning. Start by giving us your name and address, please.
I'm Candace Perez, and this is my husband, Christopher Perez. We live at 1101 Swilly Road, Plant City, Florida, 33567.
Thank you.
I do have a couple of things that are not already submitted that I was.
Okay. You can submit them to the clerk's office and then I'll see them as part of the record. If you want, how you can handle this is you can do your presentation and then when you're done, you can give all your graphics to the clerk. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I have an updated survey. So we just purchased our home in January of this year. And it's been a red tape nightmare ever since. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I'm feeling really overwhelmed because everyone else here was represented by some agency and we are just homeowners.
No, that's no problem. You're doing fine.
So at the time of the purchase of our home, I guess we were in semblance made aware of some things, right? But we're just young and naive and didn't really understand part of lots of lessons learned. I'm sorry.
That's okay. If you just tell us a little bit about your request, just take it in pieces and go through it. Absolutely.
So the first is that we are requesting a variance for the primary dwelling. Our house was built in 1965 and the road was built, as far as we know, just from asking around, it seems most of our neighbors have been generational families on Swilly Road. And they say that the road was built in 1972. So the home was built before the road. And I think that's part of what's in question is like our placement of the house in relation to the road. So as he said, we have already gotten a legal non-conforming lot review. That was something that we also had to do. Like I said, it's been a red tape nightmare. So I don't know, I guess that's that. The second one that we are requesting is a setback variance for the accessory structure in the pole barn. All of the structures that we're going to address were already on the property when we purchased it. We haven't added any structures.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Excuse me, would you please wear your mask?
Yes, I'm sorry.
But that is the biggest question, if I can just interject. So when you bought the property in January, all of the things that are wrong from a setback standpoint and so forth was existing. You didn't do any of it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. So the accessory structure of the pole barn, from the case that he presented, said it encroaches a foot, but from our new survey, the encroachment is not the same. It's only 3 inches on the front pole of the barn. Our neighbor, Randy, has also provided us with his survey that shows that the chain link fence in question, according to his survey, is the property line. He has 3 different surveys that all differ. We now have 2 different surveys that differ. So, I mean, there are minuscule differences between each survey. Our neighbor has submitted a letter. We did speak to him about purchasing a part of the property, but when he called the county, he was advised that if he were to sell any portion of his property, then he would be an illegal non-conforming lot because his lot is only 1 acre. So he was not able to do that, but he has sent in a letter that we did already submit online saying that he has no objections to the pole barn staying where it is and to any variances being granted. We also went around our neighborhood and explained the variances that we were asking for. There were 3 homeowners that we approached that were not home at the time, but every other homeowner that we approached, aside from someone who rents from Carolyn Stewart, who will be speaking opposed to our case today, signed with no objections to us receiving any and all of the variances that we were requesting. Here is a picture of the pole barn. So you can see, like I said, according to Randy's survey, the chain link fence is where the property line is. According to our survey, that chain link fence is a bit beyond the property line. So that would put that front pole encroaching like 3 inches onto the neighboring property.
Have you talked to your surveyor to try to resolve that issue?
We just had a second surveyor come out from Hillsborough County. So that's the survey that's here. Like it was like pulling teeth to get the survey in time to be here with it today, but that's what we have. I mean,
all right.
And then and here is we did submit a copy of the neighbor survey as well, just showing that from his survey, from his most recent survey, the chain link fence is, from his understanding, where the property line actually is. And then the final one is the accessory dwelling. So, like I said before, when we bought our house in January of this year, one of our non-negotiables on purchasing a home was having a place for my parents to live. My dad had recently lost his job, and it made sense for us to combine households. My son is going to have some extensive surgeries next year, so my mom is going to live with us to care for him during this time. So we made sure that we bought a house with an in-law suite, and the house had this in-law suite, which I guess we signed something saying that we were aware that it wasn't permitted. Our realtor was probably the worst person in the world for us to have hired, because she explained nothing to us. And so that's neither here nor there. But from what I understood, I believed from the clause in the contract that said something along the lines of any permits that need to be secured throughout the process, they will. Like, we would be made aware, and we would be given everything we needed to secure those permits. It wasn't until after the fact, when code enforcement that was called, that I even realized that permits that should have been secured weren't, which is why we were so willing to let code enforcement come in and take pictures and do everything, because we genuinely had no idea that anything was wrong. So we have started the process to get that taken care of. And so we did have structural plans done, which I have a small enough copy to put under there, but then I do have the certified copy as well. So these site plans, I guess, are step one. We don't know what we're doing, right? We just keep asking questions and doing whatever they tell us to do. So the first step that we were told by Matthew Kent was to apply for the variance. So we've done that, and then we went ahead and had the site development plans done, and then we will apply for after the fact permitting if variances are granted. We still have so many questions that honestly we haven't been able to get answered by anyone. So one of the questions is like the difference between an accessory dwelling and an accessory structure. And if they don't, if it's not granted a variance to remain an accessory dwelling, what do we have to do to make it an accessory structure? And like, we've asked these questions to person after person after person, and just haven't received any answers. But I have pictures of our appraisal showing that the in-law suite was already existing. There's the bedroom, there's the bathroom, the kitchen, the living room, all of it. So everything was already as is. We've made no changes to the interior of the existing mother-in-law suite. From what I've been told by neighbors, the previous owner converted the in-law suite shortly after he bought the property, and his mother-in-law lived in it for over a year before he divorced, and then they ended up ultimately selling shortly after. So I know that part of what the opposition is going to say is that it's not been lived in before, but from everyone else that lives in the neighborhood, and that's all I have to go on, is what other people are telling me, is that she did indeed have her mother living there. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
Let me just ask a quick question. So you've answered most of my questions. How did this all start? How did this come to light
So our
after you
neighbor,
bought the property?
to the south of us, Carol, who will be the one speaking opposed today, called code enforcement. So we were outside cleaning up our yard, and I have pictures. Can you go to my bag and get the pictures? We were outside cleaning up the yard, and there are some viburnum, like right at the edge of the property line. She had a black chain link fence. On our side of the fence were some viburnum that were overgrown by vines that were planted on her side of the fence. And so we went out and we cut the viburnum and we cut back all the vines. She came out and told us at the time that we were doing it, we could not do that because those were her vines. We called the sheriff's department and were advised that we could do whatever we wanted to the vines that were on our side of the fence. Oh, actually, I lied. I think they're right here.
All right. So it was a neighbor complaint, and that's how this got going. Okay,
Correct.
I understand.
So the code enforcement got involved. We have submitted the transcript of her going back and forth with code enforcement and what was said. We have submitted a letter from us and from her claiming that she was going to take over part of our property through adverse possession. I mean, it's been a lot. We've done everything that we could to apologize. We've sent her edible arrangements. We've tried to mitigate the situation, and it seems unmitigatable. So we offered to put up a privacy fence. As you'll see in the letters, she ended up putting up the privacy fence herself on part of the property. My husband and I went out and cleared the way for the property fence to be put up because we thought, like we sat and talked to her for hours. And like I said, I thought we were on good grounds. I sent her an edible arrangement to thank her for her service for the 4th of July. And then we applied for this because this ball was already rolling. And then there was a 7-page rebuttal from her saying why we shouldn't get the variances. So I don't know how else to quell things with her. But we have also gone ahead and put a privacy fence up in front of the black chain link, which we have to move because apparently it's a few inches onto her property. So we'll be moving it, but it will stay there. So we put privacy fence along the whole entire area so she can no longer see into our property at all, to grant her the privacy that she's losing, according to her, by having the mother-in-law suite there.
This is my last question. So I just want to make sure. So you bought this house, all of these improvements were there as they are today.
Yes.
And you don't have any plans to change the house or the accessory structure or anything? You don't have any plans just other than it is as it is?
Correct.
All right. And regarding your question about accessory structure versus accessory dwelling, Mr. Granulard should be able to help you with that. And your planner that's assigned to this case, he should be able to help you with that and understanding the difference.
I think I understand the difference. I just don't understand how to fix it so that it would no longer be to where it has to be an accessory dwelling, right? Like, I don't know. We would like for it to be an accessory dwelling.
Right. Understood.
We want my parents to be able to stay there to provide care for my son as he goes through surgery.
Okay. I understand. Does that complete your presentation?
I think so.
All right. Thank you so much. You are welcome to submit whatever you'd like into the clerk's record.
Thank you.
And it will all be on file. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll go to anyone that would like to speak in support. Anyone in favor of this application, either in the room or online? Seeing no one. Anyone in opposition? All right.
Yes, I'm Carol Stewart speaking.
We have two people,
Okay.
one online. Okay, we have one in the room. Ma'am, if you want to go first, that would be fine. If you could give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, please. My name is Carol Stewart, and I also act as attorney for the trust because the property at 1204 Swilly Road is the Stewart Trust. So that is the property that the Perez's are seeking to burden with their problems. And my address again, 1204 Swilly Road, which is to the south of the Perez property. So in opposition, some of the things that were just said, I can address at the end if I take time, but the house at 1101 Swilly Road, when it was sold in 2016 and 17, was listed as 4 bedrooms. So some interior modification was made to the house because when it was listed and the Perez's purchased it in, I think they made their sales contract in the fall of 2020, but the closing was in January of 21. It was listed as 5 bedrooms. So Mrs. Perez has confirmed that inside the house there are 5 bedrooms. So in their seeking to turn the garage, which was there since 1987, and that should be part of the legally non-conforming as just a plain old accessory structure. It was existing, it was there, and it's been a garage. The claim of it being converted and somebody living there until before it was sold, I really can't say what happened. The previous owner I know is, I'll just say Jeff, he's not here, but he and his wife were divorced a good year and a half, and the property was deeded just to him. So the idea that her mother was living there until right before it was sold is incorrect. They were divorced, she moved out. I had no idea that anybody was living in the garage, and it's hearsay for the Perez's to say everyone else says the mother-in-law was living there. It's just flat out hearsay. I don't know why he converted it. He may have done it when they were getting ready to split up so he could go stay in the garage until she left. But the fact of the matter, it's a garage. No inspections were done, no certification of being built to code for electricity and the septic. The same thing. Jeff, and it was very clear to many of the neighbors that their septic system was already overloaded because it is in low-lying ground. So adding a suite. The problem with adding the suite is the Perez's were on notice when they purchased, whether they read their contract or not. They were on notice that there were unpermitted changes made to the property. And they assumed the risk and the liability for that. Now, I have no problem in representing the Stewart Trust and the value of the 1204 property, that garage, which was always there, can be an accessory structure. I don't care, and I've told the Perez's this, that you can make that an extra great room for the family, you can make it a kid's study area, but it should not be a sleeping area. There are 5 bedrooms in the main house. I think that it is for economic convenience, and what the previous owner did, since they were aware of it, and in their sales contract they signed, showed that they were accepting and assuming that risk and knew about it, that there was unpermitted work. So there was not a failure to disclose a material fact regarding the sale by the previous owner. That is according to what the Perez's have stated. Again, they're in their 30s. I don't know. This is not their first home purchase. So they're asking to add a 6th bedroom, and they're asking to put it right on top of the Swilly Road property. So now I will go to what has caused the issues. They have no respect for property boundaries. They have none. They don't look up code. They don't check anything. They put a chicken coop within 10 feet of our property. I mean, it's been all over the news that Hillsborough County is letting chicken coops and all of this, but they put one within 10 feet. You know, the code enforcement came around and he said, okay, he measured from the back of it. And I said, let it go. I want the chickens to be put in danger, because if they let them out in the yard, they're going to get killed by coyotes, foxes, or hawks and eagles. So we let that go, but they just build stuff. And this is done by their tenants too. And then they say it's inconvenient. It was too inconvenient to move the chicken coop. Okay. The law be darned. So in regard to their tenant, which is her mother, the ripping out of the plants, I mean, it went on for hours. And when I finally went out there to say, hey, can we talk here? Hi, this is who I am, it became very combative. So what they're demanding is that we allow 1204 Swilley Road to be burdened by tenants who have no respect for the property line, and frankly have cursed and sworn at us. I won't repeat what they called our jasmine, but she didn't like jasmine. Oh, my daughter's allergic, so I'm going to rip out all of your jasmine, which is what they did. And I asked him, no, and I said, fine. But we did have a chain link fence. They didn't care. I mean, I have pictures. I'm not submitting those. That's not the issue here. I'm not filing trespass against them. I didn't call the sheriff. That's their idea, is to call me racist. They called me racist for questioning their behavior because they have no respect for property boundary. So after ripping out the plants and then for days burning their trash when the wind was blowing to the south, probably at a greater speed than at any time somebody responsible would be burning trash, that they smoked out our neighbors from their pool deck and from their recreational vehicle area where they had guests visiting who had set up an extension to sit outside and have some privacy. I mean, this went on for days, and the tenant left when I went over there and said something about the smoke. They're asking for this to be permanent, to be a permanent burden on this property, and there's no reason for it. If all it takes is for them to remove the stove and to call that just a plain old accessory structure and make it a great room, make it a study area, if it's nice and they want to do that, fine. But they have 5 bedrooms in the house. The other matter is in regard to the neighbors. That's nice if they went around and asked neighbors who had no interest. It's not their property boundary. So the neighbors who said that, like, oh, I don't care, fine. In regard to the what they're calling a pole barn, which is really an RV and whatever parking area, it's a taking at this point, and I've advised them, and I said I can't give you legal advice, but ask the owner for an easement. They have an answer there. I can't give them legal advice, but they can purchase an easement.
Ms. Stewart, if I could interrupt and just ask you to wrap it up. You've taken about half of the opposition's time, and we have someone else that would like to speak. Thank you.
All right. So that basically was the end of it. And I would just say I'd ask your consideration that while it's a very sad story that they didn't know what they were doing when they purchased the property, that not be granted a variance. And thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it. There's someone in the room that would like to speak in opposition. Yes, sir. Come forward and start by giving us your name and address, please.
Yeah, my name's Lawrence Frederick. I live at 1414 Stevens Oaks Court, the corner of Swidley and Stevens Oaks Court. The reason why I'm here today is my understanding it's more like a duplex. And the way we're zoned out there, I've been out there 27 years. That's one of the reasons why I moved out there. It's a peaceful little neighborhood, the way it was zoned. And I'd hope to retire out there and with it being that way. I have no problem with somebody having a hardship. And, you know, for instance, if your mother's sick or something and wants to stay with you, that's different. It's a short time. But after that, I don't believe that the zoning should be changed so that we can have an apartment here. And my reasoning for it is, one, our roads, as they already mentioned, they're small roads, it's a country area. I live down there with people speeding up and down the road. More people in the area creates more problems. We have a lot of law enforcement, retired, inactive, military people in the area, people that just wanted to live peacefully. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't want an apartment. If they want to have a hardship for their mother, and when it's over, that's a different story to me. So, I mean, I'm not against nobody. I'm just saying, I don't want apartments in my neighborhood. And I think that's only fair. I've been there 27 years, and we all know how families go. Families agree to doing something, then they disagree. We can't choose our families. And when they disagree and move away, what happens to this apartment? It gets rented. That's what happens. Furthermore, I was there when the house was all reconstructed. The garage at that time was not an apartment. What happened since then, I don't know. But that was one owner that sold it. It was an investor that sold it. Then them people sold it, and I believe to these people. So whether the apartment was there ahead of time or not, nobody really knows. So that's all I really have to say. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for coming down. I appreciate it. If you could please sign.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. All right, last call. Anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? Seeing no one. All right, we'll close that portion of the testimony and we'll go back to county staff. Mr. Grantley, I just have a quick question to ask if you have done any research on the property appraiser records for this property, if it documents the accessory dwelling unit and so forth.
Here it does. I don't have it with. I can look it up right now.
Well, that's okay. We're gonna keep moving. I just wondered if you had done that research. So that's all right. All right. Will Mr. Hisney, anything further?
Yeah, this is
No,
Carol
ma'am.
Stewart. If
I'm
I
sorry.
may to-
Excuse me, Ms. Stewart. We've closed opposition testimony, so it's inappropriate for you to speak at this time. All right. Excuse me.
Yeah, no
We're gonna
further
move on.
staff comment.
All right. Thank you so much. Then we'll go back to the applicant who has 5 minutes for rebuttal. And while you're coming up, let me just ask you, the staff report talks about the applicant has been cited and has been advised that if the variances are approved, that you will obtain after the fact building permits.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
you will obtain building permits for all of these issues that were subject to the variances.
Yes, ma'am. That's the
Okay.
plan. And I do have our appraisal, if you would like me to submit that into the record as well. I have
You're
it
welcome
with
to
us.
submit it. What would be the purpose of that?
You just asked him if the appraisal showed on there the barn and the in-law suite. It does, so I
Okay.
could submit it.
I was asking about the property, the Hillsborough County property appraiser records.
Okay.
Yeah.
So both of those structures are there. The garage is still there as a garage, not as an accessory dwelling. And then the barn is also there.
All right.
So-
And before you keep going, I don't think we put your name on the record when you started speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Candace Perez, 1101 Swilly Road.
Thank you so much. All right. Now let me give you an opportunity as the applicant. You get the last word for rebuttal.
Yeah, so as you could hear from a lot of what Mrs. Stewart said, this all started over a simple feud. We, like I said, have really tried to mitigate the situation as many ways as we could. If we do not get the accessory dwelling, which I understand people's opposition to the ability to rent it out later on. That's not our intention. Our intention is only to use it for my parents to live there so that they can help with the care of my son as he undergoes extensive surgeries next year. We're willing to do whatever. We just want the issue to be resolved, and we're only filing for what we're being kind of told to file for. Like, this is what it is, so this is what you need, and so then we just have done it, right? So if it needs to be an accessory dwelling, and I mean accessory structure instead of an accessory dwelling. I just need somebody to tell me how to make that happen. Okay?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate that. With that, we'll close variance 21-1278 and go to the next case.
All right, that concludes our variances, then takes us to section J of the agenda, which are special uses. And the first special use is item J1, application number 21-0375. The applicant is Trademark Metals Recycling LLC. The request is for a special use approval for a land excavation, and then also incorporated in the request is a variance to fence requirements. The staff report and recommendation will be presented by Colleen Marshall following the applicant's presentation. Also, Jillian Massey of Planning Commission staff will be rendering comment.
All right. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Hisney. My name is Ron Noble with Buchanan Ingersoll. My address is 401 East Kennedy Boulevard. The remaining folks in the room here are largely our project team. We have Steve Henry with Links and Associates, who's our transportation consultant. Cami Corbett with Hill Ward and Henderson as our land use attorney. This is Joseph Stalker with Trademark Metals. He is their environmental manager. He'll be making our primary presentation this morning. And also is Jeff Powers with Trademark Metals, who's our general manager. Trademark Metals is Florida's largest scrap metal recycler and processor. They have facilities throughout the state of Florida, and they operated and constructed and filled and have closed a landfill at the subject property that was comprised of shredder fluff. And Mr. Stalker will describe that in a moment. Got a very exciting new project, Madam Hearing Officer, that is going to involve the complete removal of this landfill from Hillsborough County. I think we're familiar with the concept of landfill mining, where an applicant will go in and extract certain materials from a landfill on a limited or isolated basis. This is a very different project. It is going to remove the entire landfill, the overburden cover, all the solid waste that's in the landfill, the liner that's beneath the landfill, and at the end of the project, post-reclamation, it will return the property to green space. How did we get here? It's a bit of an interesting journey. Obviously, the Hillsborough County Land Development Code does not include a use or a permitting process for removal of a landfill, right? And we have, we certainly have the permitting process for a borrow pit. This project doesn't neatly fit into the land excavation process and permitting as a special use for a borrow pit, but it's the closest thing that the staff and the applicant could come up with. Staff could have, the county could have kind of punted this and said, well, this isn't regulated under the LDC. Just go ahead with your project, get your construction permits. But both the county and Trademark Metals thought it was appropriate and really important to have a permitting process, a process that involved public involvement, review by other agencies and stakeholders. So that's how we find ourselves before you this morning asking for this approval with the waivers. So when it comes to the waivers, again, this is kind of a unique process, and we're trying to pigeonhole it into a land excavation special use permit. But unlike a new borrow pit or land excavation, this property has a landfill that is already fully constructed, right? It's constructed, and it goes in some areas very close to the property borders. Likewise, on the adjacent properties, they are already also developed, primarily with residential uses, but certainly within proximity to the setback requirements that we'll be seeking a waiver for today. We've had a very successful relationship with our adjacent property owners over the years. That's come through a lot of hard work by Trademark Metals, and Mr. Stalker is going to describe to you some of the extensive public outreach that we've implemented as part of this process. As of now, I'm not aware of any opposition to this petition, which is pretty rare for a land excavation permit, and it's a testimony to county staff and the applicant for all the work that's gone into this. Finally, we've met with both Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission. Both of those will be reviewing and permitting agencies. Not only are they not in opposition to, but they actively support this project. They find it very innovative. They like a lot of the environmental benefits that will come of this, which again, Mr. Stalker is going to address for us right now. We're going to try and keep this within 15 minutes. We may need just a couple minutes of your indulgence.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Noble, if you could please sign in. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Joe Stalker, 5220 Dover Street, Tampa, Florida, 33619. I'm the environmental manager for Trademark Metals Recycling, and we have a presentation we'd like to take you through. Next slide. So the Kingsway Road landfill is located at 1540 North Kingsway Road, Sefner, Florida. And as Ron indicated, this project is our goal to get rid of the landfill. We want to completely remove this landfill and leave it as an empty green space out there. What's going to happen is we're going to take the area, we're going to mine and excavate all of the material inside of it. We're going to haul it off site to a facility that we're building in Bushnell, Florida. And then we're going to process all that material to recover additional metallic fraction from the material. And then we're going to dispose of the remaining material at a permanent Class 1 landfill in Sumter County. Next slide, please. So it's understanding that as Ron kind of indicated, that we're trying to make this fit in with this land excavation permit, just because that was kind of the closest we could come up with. And those type of projects have these setback requirements that we're aware we cannot meet because of the landfill itself being the setback issue. So that's what we're here. We're trying to seek approval so we can excavate and get rid of this landfill completely. Next slide, please. So the history of this landfill was, it was originally a former borrow pit. When we took it over, we converted it in the 1980s, and that's when it became the Kingsway Road landfill. It has been our landfill the entire time. It's what's called a monofill. So there is only one type of material in there, and that is our automotive shredder residue, or what we call fluff. Throughout the life of the landfill, there were several permanent expansions in different phases until we fully closed it back in 2006. Next slide, please. So the ASR, the automotive shredder residue, it's basically, for the most part, the non-metallic fraction. So when you go through and you are shredding metal at one of our shredder facilities, it is basically the non-ferrous portion of the scrap metal. So non-ferrous being non-metallic. So when you go through, you have your cars and your refrigerators and everything else going through, the non-metallic portion comes back out about 25%. It mostly consists of the seat cushions and the foams, carpet, vinyl, wood, plastic, concrete, just the remaining material. But it does also consist of the metallic fraction that you can't capture with a magnet, because typically the systems will run through a drum magnet, pick up the ferrous portion, but then you have a remaining portion come out. And that's what remains inside the landfill. And that's what our goal is, to remove that. At the landfill, there's approximately 1.3 million tons of material that are currently disposed of there. Next slide, please. So landfill itself is your typical pyramid shape. It's about 100 feet above ground, and it's approximately 13 acres in total. The system does have what's called a leachate collection system. So the leachate is when stormwater or water comes into contact with material, it's what comes out of the landfill at the bottom. We have a network of pumps and pipes that basically capture that leachate and then pump it into a leachate tank system, or a tank system that we have on site. We do currently perform groundwater monitoring. It's a part of our permit requirement. We do it quarterly, and that will continue out through the life of the project. And that groundwater monitoring is essentially to make sure that we're not contaminating any type of neighboring well systems. We do have a positive relationship with our neighbors throughout the life of the landfill itself, and to this day. We've always maintained good relations with our neighbors. We talk to them. They know who we are. They know our contact information. They know how to get a hold of us if they ever have any issues or concerns with the landfill. Next slide, please. So what is the plan? So we're going to construct a temporary truck load up facility. It'll be located at the northeast corner of the landfill near the entrance gate. We'll go through, dig out the landfill itself, excavate all the ASR, and then load it in trucks. There should be approximately 4 trucks per hour with a maximum of 38 trucks in a single day. We expect the project to take approximately 5 to 6 years, but due to any potential unforeseen circumstances, we have requested to have it permitted as an 8-year maximum so that we can make sure we have ample time to excavate the entirety of the landfill. Next slide, please. So this right here kind of shows the life of the landfill and how we expect it to go. You can kind of see as it goes through how the landfill was formed and how it's dug out. And then eventually by year 6, we're going to have this nice, beautiful green space. Next slide. So this is kind of the excavation plan. This shows the current conditions of the landfill itself and the current slopes. And it's pulled from the actual plan that's already been provided. And it shows basically how we're going to do it. Next slide. And the reclamation plan is the final version. What's going to happen once we're done with the landfill, once we've finished digging everything out, and how it's going to look at the end. Next slide, please. So again, our plan, once the excavation is completed, we're going to remove all the leachate collection system components. So all the pipings, all of the sumps, the tanks themselves, everything's going to be removed. We are then going to completely remove the liner system and get rid of the liner system. Once we have removed everything, we're then going to verify that 100% of all waste has been removed, and that'll be a part of our permitting process through the state. Once we've gone through and verified, we're going to regrade the site for the regulations, and there should be approximately 4-to-1 side slope and a grass slope going down. And then we'll also make sure we continue to comply with any post-excavation stormwater drainage requirements, which will be coming through an ERP permit. Next slide, please. To help make sure this happens, we have also, again, wanted to maintain open communications with our neighbors. We've hosted multiple different presentations at the landfill itself, where we invited the neighbors in the area to come out, learn about the project, and to ask any questions and to let us know any concerns they may have. We also gave them all of our contact information so that if they ever have any future concerns, that they can get a hold of us. And so far, we have had no complaints or concerns come from them. We actually had, as part of the application, we submitted, I believe, some letters of support that came from the neighbors too, that they were in support of the project. Next slide, please. So we also wanted to make sure that, as we go through and build this landfill, that we're not causing undue hardship to our neighbors. So we do have some mitigation measures that we're going to put in place. So we're going to do what's called a white noise backup alarm. So one of the biggest concerns would be from the beeping all the time from mobile equipment, which we need that because that's a safety concern for our teammates as they're working out at the landfill. But we're going to make sure that it's done in a way that's not annoying the neighbors. So this system will have a system that auto adjusts to about 5 to 10 decibels above background levels. So people can still hear it, but not in a way that's going to annoy the neighbors. We're also going to add fencing and vegetative barriers so that the neighbors are not going to see the project as much as possible. And then we're also going to deconstruct the landfill itself in a way that accounts for minimizing the negative views of the landfill. Basically, the landfill itself, as we dig it, we'll keep a barrier wall up as the landfill itself as we dig so that people don't see that. Next slide, please. We're also going to include a truck tire cleaning station. So this will help control the mud drag out to make sure that nothing's going onto the roadways as the trucks leave. And to help control dust at the facility, we're going to have a water truck that'll go around and act as dust suppression. And then ultimately, we're also going to have reduced hours of operation. We're only going to operate from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits? Okay, great. Getting rid of a landfill, that's probably one of the greatest things we can do. I mean, how often does anybody get the chance to say, hey, we're getting rid of a landfill, right? We don't have any planned development going on here, but we do expect that once this is done, that it'll increase the property values for the neighbors too. As far as expected environmental benefits, we do expect that this would offset 1.4 million metric tons of carbon equivalents from just the new production of different metal. And then we'll also be significantly increasing volumes of metal that can be recovered, as opposed to something having to go mine and create new metal. So we actually offset that process. And then ultimately, there will also be less material to be re-landfilled in Sumter County. And then the ADC, the fluff material, is something that gets considered as an alternative daily cover in ADC. So it actually offsets new sand and dirt that the landfills have to use as their cover. We also expect job creation. We're going to have 5 on-site employees, and then we're also going to have 12 full-time truck drivers. Next slide, please. We are aware that there's a bunch of additional permits that we're going to need. So in addition to this land excavation permit, we know we're going to have a landfill operation permit from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. We're going to have a director's authorization from Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission, and we're going to have an environmental resource permit from the Southwest Florida Water Management District. Next slide. And that's pretty much it, unless you have any questions.
I do. Just to the intent, well, let me back up. You mentioned the landfill has been closed since 2006. Is that correct? So it's just been sitting there.
That's correct.
And so now the plan is to remove the landfill. And so 8 years passes and everything's gone. Is it lake creation? Is it grass? What does it look like?
Right now, our intent is to be a grass field.
Okay. And could that be built upon in the future?
We don't have any plans on what that would look like in the future. For us, our intent would be to work with the neighbors to find out what they would want. And ultimately, we could potentially give them first right of refusal to purchase the property.
I see. Okay. Thank you. That was the end of my questions. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office. Mr. Noble, does that complete your presentation? All right. Thank you so much. Then we'll go to Development Services.
Good morning, Colleen Marshall, Development Services. The request today is for a special use for land excavation to allow the removal of 1.3 million cubic yards of material from a closed landfill site over an 8-year period. The proposed excavation is located on the west side of North Kingsway Road, south of Pruitt Road. The proposed excavation will completely remove the material within the landfill. The original request proposed by the applicant was to remove a total of 1.1 million cubic yards over a 6-year period. However, the applicant submitted revisions to the proposed duration in cubic yards to allow for accommodation of any unexpected conditions or delays that may be encountered during the excavation project. The proposed excavation meets all separation requirements found in LDC section 61154A2 for dry land excavations, except for the 500-foot separation from residentially developed or zoned properties. Residentially developed property exists to the north, south, east, and west of the subject site. The applicant's requesting a waiver to reduce the required distance separation to residentially developed property to 25 feet to the north, 75 feet to the south, and 134 feet to the east. No distance separation waiver is required to the west, as the proposed excavation area is over 720 feet away from the residentially developed property to the west. The applicant has agreed to reduce the hours of operation to 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, excluding holidays recognized by Hillsborough County to lessen the impacts on the surrounding residential development. The applicants also agreed to additional screening to help to screen the land excavation area from the existing residential development. The applicants agreed to provide a solid 8-foot-high wood fence along the property lines adjacent to residentially developed properties to the north and south of the subject site, if approved by variance by the land use hearing officer, as shown on the proposed site plan. If the proposed variance to allow for the 8-foot height is not approved, a 6-foot-high solid wood fence will be required adjacent to residentially developed property. Additionally, natural vegetation along the southern property boundary will be required to remain, as shown on the site plan, which varies from 26 feet to 82 feet in width. The proposed land excavation is unique in nature, as it is specifically to remove the existing landfill. Because the existing landfill is less than 500 feet from residentially developed property, to remove the landfill, there'd be no way to do so without a waiver to the 500-foot distance separation requirement. Per the applicant, a community meeting was held on the site January 23rd, 2021, with approximately 40 neighbors in attendance to present details on the project, potential impacts of the project, and to have discussion with neighbors on their potential concerns. The neighbors were also given a guided tour of the existing landfill. The applicant has also provided letters of no objection from surrounding neighbors, whose locations are shown in the graphic provided by the applicant, contained in the record in the staff report. Additionally, the applicant sent an update letter to all property owners within 500 feet of the proposed excavation with the October letter of notice to ensure that the surrounding property owners were aware of the increase in the duration in cubic yards of the excavation that was submitted in the project revisions. Staff does not object to the proposed waiver. Given the proximity to residentially developed properties, staff recommends a proposed 8-foot-high solid fence along the property lines adjacent to residentially developed properties to assist in screening the proposed land excavation. Consequently, to allow for an 8-foot-high fence, the applicant has requested a variance to the maximum fence height per LDC section 60702 C2A. The applicant requests a 2-foot variance to allow for the 8-foot-high fence on the subject property adjacent to residentially developed properties. The hearing officer will be required to make a separate decision on the fence variance in conjunction with the special use application. No agency objections were received by staff. Staff recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And no questions at this time. Thank you. Planning Commission, please.
Hi, good morning, Madam Hearing Officer. This is Jillian Massey with the Planning Commission staff. The subject property is in the residential 2 future land use category. It's in the rural area and located within the limits of the Thonotosassa Community Plan. The applicant is requesting a special use designation as a land excavation site to remove the landfill of shredded junk vehicles and to provide land reclamation. The proposal is consistent with Objective 11 and its associated policies 11.4 through 11.8 of the Conservation and Aquifer Recharge element in the comprehensive plan, which discusses items such as minimizing negative impacts to surrounding properties and encouraging recreational development of reclaimed land excavations. Overall, the proposed special use would allow for continued mining activities that are consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County and is compatible with the existing development pattern found in the surrounding area. And based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds this proposed special use consistent with the Future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to any conditions proposed by Development Services Department. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, this time we'll call for anyone that would like to speak in support. Anyone in favor of this application? No one online? No one in the room? Anybody in opposition to this request? Seeing no one. County staff, anything else? Mr. Hisney?
No, ma'am.
All right. Mr. Noble, you get the last word if you'd like. All right, then with that, we'll close special use 21-0375. I think we have 2 cases left, so let's take a 5-minute break. So if you could be back at 11:50 and we'll finish the hearing. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to resume the October 25th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer hearing. Mr. Hisney, if you could call the next case.
Okay, the next case on the agenda was item J2, Special Use 21-0915. However, at the start of the hearing, that case was continued to December 13th. That then takes us to our final special use today, which is item J3, application 21-1001. The applicant is David Mechanic. The request is for a community residential home type C, and the request incorporates some variances to lot development standards. Staff report and recommendation will be presented by Tim Lampley following Tim Lampkin following the applicant's presentation. There were also Jillian Massey of Planning Commission staff will also render comment.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Mechanic.
Morning, Ms. Finch. My name is David Mechanic. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. My office is at 305 South Boulevard, Tampa, Florida. I would just like to state that I am both an attorney and a certified planner. My first comment is that both the staff and the Planning Commission reports are very thorough, and I will try to avoid being redundant, but by necessity, my presentation will cover most of the same points, but I will try to be as brief as I can. This request involves a parcel that is zoned both RMC 12 as well as RSC 6. However, to clarify, the special use application only will apply to the RMC 12 portion of the property. The RSC 6 property is proposed only for retention purposes for the community residential home, and that will be incorporated through the unified site plan process at the county. First, I'd like to address, and by the way, I had some difficulty with screen sharing, but I would refer you to the site plan in the staff report, which I think appropriately illustrates the conditions on the site and what is being proposed. Firstly, I'd just like to mention that there is a distance requirement whereby in order to discourage the concentration of community residential homes, that the proposed community residential home not be within 1,200 feet of another type B or type C community residential home. We supply documentation in the file that indicates there are no such type B or C residential homes within the 1,200 square foot, 1,200 foot radius from the property. We do have a requested waiver because of another site development standard that the property cannot be or is recommended not to be within 500 feet of another RSC 6 zone property. And we have presented a fairly exhaustive analysis in our application to justify that waiver. And I would like to comment first to mitigate for that proximity to RSC 6 zoned properties. We are proposing there will be a 150-foot buffer on the north end of the community residential home to the nearest RSC 6 property. We also would point out that there is a substantial need for this type of use in the community, and by virtue of the code, which specifically allows community residential homes in residential zoning districts, we are furthering that particular objective from the code. In fact, there is documentation in our application to indicate both a tremendous need for such facilities with a increasing aging population, with baby boomers and other folks requiring more and more of these services. The staff report also indicates that the density calculations reflect that there are that 62 residents would be permitted to reside within the building. And as is noted in the staff report, the RSC 6 property cannot be counted toward the density. So this density calculation is strictly based on the RMC 12 portion of the property. Regarding parking, we are fully complying with the code with respect to parking. We will have ample parking for the facility. As noted in the staff report, there are no buffering or screening requirements for the northwest or south parts of the property. However, we are, as shown on the site plan, providing a screening along the west boundary, that is the rear boundary of the property, including a 6-foot fence, as well as a hedge of evergreen trees to be planted at 10 feet. On the south or side setback line, there will be a 6-foot fence installed. The code requires that this building, being located in a residential district, should have a residential appearance. And we worked extensively with Mr. Lampkin and our architect to establish a number of very specific criteria that will result in the structure being very residential in appearances. Next, I would just like to discuss the variances, which again, we have provided very thorough analysis in the application, which I would commend you to read. And so, but I will hit the highlights. We are asking for a variance of the rear setback of from 50 feet to 27 feet. The rear setback is considerably larger than what you would expect, because the building is proposed at 35 feet, which is, by the way, a normal residential height even for single family homes. But it does then dictate additional 2 feet of setback for every foot of building above 20 feet. So that causes the necessity for that particular variance. We are also asking for a side yard variance, which is the south boundary, from 40 to 30 feet. And as we have mentioned, we are mitigating for those circumstances via a evergreen hedge on the western rear boundary and a 6-foot fence on the southern boundary of the property. Also, the retention pond will act as a 150-foot buffer against the adjacent property to the north. I would just like to mention to you that we have filed a market study with the application, which indicates, as I said earlier, a need for this particular use at this particular location, and an increasing demand for this particular use. The variances, of course, were not caused by my client's actions in any way. It simply is a question of identifying a suitable parcel for this type of use, which is large enough to accommodate this kind of use, and the circumstances of the proximity to both the RSC 6 parcels, as well as the variances to the setbacks, are more than warranted, and again, were not caused by my client's actions. With that, I would just like to note that there were no staff objections to the application, and there is a recommendation from the Planning Commission that the request is consistent. And we agree with all of the staff findings and agree to all of the conditions set forth in the staff report. That concludes my presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
No questions at this time. Mr. Mechanic, we had a video of you in the beginning of your presentation, but just to let you know, that video I can hear you just fine, but we've lost the video connection, just so you know. But we certainly have your testimony for the record. All right, we'll go to.
It automatically just seemed to pop off. I didn't do anything there.
And there you are back. We can see you now. So thank you so much. All right. Development Services, please.
Hello, I'm bringing up a very short PowerPoint presentation to go with my verbiage. So this is for a special use application for a community residential home, 21-1001, and I am Tim Lampkin with Development Services. So here's the site plan that's been color coded. The property size is approximately 1.53 acres in size. As the applicant noted, there are two zoning districts. The RSC 6 is 0.49 acres and the RMC 12 is 1.045 acres. The property is located off of North Hoover Road. It's approximately 450 feet north of West Water Street, and it is in the urban service area. As the applicant noted, they require a waiver of the distance separation per Land Development Code, Section 6.11.28.a. The Type C community residential home must be located at least 500 feet from residentially single-family zoning. The property has RSC 6 zoning nearby, cat-a-corner to the southwest corner of the subject property. It's approximately 35 feet separation from that, from the proposed building. It's approximately 150 feet directly north of the unified development, approximately 235 feet to the west, and the RSC zoning approximately 340 feet to the northwest and 205 feet to the northeast. As the applicant noted and delineated on the screen, the red area shows the proposed community residential home that's going to be entirely located on the RMC 12 portion, and that's where the density was calculated, which equates to 62 residents. The 0.49 acre proposed retention pond highlighted with the blue dotted lines, that is not included in the density. However, when the applicant comes in, it will be included in the unified site plan. It's not part of this request. And they also will have an additional 5-foot buffer that's shown on the green on that unified plan with type A screening to the home to the north because it's in the unified development. The applicant does meet the proposed parking. They're providing 26 spaces. And next, and here's an aerial of the location, and you can see the RSC catty corner. The applicant's also requesting two variances per LDC section 6.0101. A minimum rear yard setback of 20 feet is required in the RMC 12 district. However, per end note 8, an additional 2 feet of setback is required for every foot of building height over 20 feet. In this instance, a building height of 35 feet is proposed. This is resulting in a required rear yard setback of 50 feet. The applicant requests a 23-foot reduction to the required rear setback to allow a setback of 27 feet from the west property line. Second variance, LDC section 6.01, I'm sorry, the second variance 6.0101 minimum, it's regarding end note 8, which requires a minimum side yard setback of 10 feet is required in the RMC 12 district. However, an additional 2 feet of setback is required for every foot over 20 feet. In the subject case, the building height of 35 feet is again proposed, resulting in a required side yard setback of 40 feet. The applicant requests a 10-foot reduction to the required side yard setback to allow a side setback on the south property line of 30 feet. Staff does find the special use application approvable with conditions. Transportation staff reviewed and has no objections. Environmental protection reviewed. And they'll need to apply for a WDR 30 delineation request application at the time of site and development. Water resources staff has no objections. And the buildings, as the applicant noted, buildings will be limited to 35 feet in height. This is consistent with the RSC 6 zone properties within 500 feet, as the RSC 6 property zoning district does allow homes up to 35 feet in height. And also note that east across North Hubert Avenue is PD 16-0364, which does permit a maximum of 25 townhomes. Staff worked extensively with the applicant to ensure that it maintains a residential appearance, and there are a number of conditions regarding this. There's also a condition regarding the maximum number of place residents at 62 and additional conditions. Staff does not have any further comments unless there are questions.
No questions at this time. Thank you. Planning Commission, please.
Hi, this is Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. The subject property is in the residential 12 future land use category. It is in the urban service area and not located within the limits of a community plan. The proposal meets the intent of Objective 1 and Policy 1.4 of the future land use element of the comprehensive plan by providing a residential support use within the urban service area. The proposal meets the compatibility requirements of Policy 1.4 as the predominant character of the area is medium to high density single, two, and multifamily developments. The proposed density of the area is comparable to the existing residential density in this area. The subject site has two zoning districts, RSC 6 and RMC 12. A CRH Type C assisted living facility is a residential support use that is permitted in the RMC 12 zoning district, and the maximum requested placed residence at 62 is therefore limited to the RSC portion of the site. However, the entire subject site is within the Res 12 future land use category, and 62 placed residence is acceptable per the comprehensive plan. According to Objective 9, Policy 9.1 and 9.2, the proposed use must comply with all local, state, and federal land development regulations. The applicant has agreed to comply with all applicable requirements and additional conditions proposed by the Department of Development Services and therefore meets the intent of those policies. The proposal also meets the intent of Objective 16 and its accompanying policies that require new development, infill, and redevelopment to be compatible with the surrounding area in character, lot size, and density. All buffering and screening requirements of the Land Development Code will be met. The stormwater management pond on the north side of the subject site will act as an appropriate transition from the RSC 6 to the north and the RMC 12 located on the southern portion of the site. Objective 17 and Policy 17.1 permit the development of residential support uses in all residential future land use categories. The subject site is located in the residential 12 future land use category and is therefore permitted. Objective 20 and policies 20.5 and 20.6 support the development of congregate living facilities in unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the limitations. The applicant has demonstrated that no existing facilities are within a reasonable distance to prevent excessive concentration. There are no existing community residential homes type B or C within 1,200 feet of the subject site. There are also no licensed group homes within 1,200 feet of the site. The applicant's proposed density of 62 placed residents is comparable to the density permitted in the surrounding area. The proposed special use therefore meets the intent of Objective 20 by providing innovative housing for all residents of Hillsborough County. Overall, the proposed special use would allow for development that is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for Unincorporated Hillsborough County, and that is compatible with the existing and planned development pattern found in the surrounding area. And based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff is finding that the proposed special use is consistent with the comprehensive plan, subject to the conditions proposed by the Department of Development Services. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it. Is there anyone in the room or online that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor of this application? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition to the request online? No? All right. County staff, anything else?
No, ma'am.
All right. Mr. Mechanic, you can have the last word.
I don't have anything additional to add. Thank you for your consideration of the application.
All right. Thank you so much. Then we'll close special use GEN 21-1001 and we'll address the last case on the agenda. The appeal.
Yes, ma'am. So the last case listed on the agenda is Appeal 21-1295. However, this is listed in error. The applicant on October 15th had submitted a request to continue this appeal hearing to the November 15th land use hearing officer meeting. So.
All right. So then for anyone that's listening, agenda item I-1, which is Appeal 21-1295, will be continued to the November 15th, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer hearing. So with that, that was our last item and we'll adjourn the hearing. Thank you all for your time and testimony.